feel like I have to have a drum roll,
I know.
Camille.
We can't start this like every other one. This is pretty major.
This is the end of the year signs and headlines recap.
Yeah. That's the whole year, folks.
It's not year-ish. Although
No.
although maybe it could feel like a year-ish if we do not cover some of the things that you thought were super important to you.
Yes.
But all to say is if you did not tell us what was important to you, because we did call it out last week, and even though last week was I'm not gonna lie, it was a dumpster fire of a week with all
Yeah.
massacres. You
Heavy week.
know, we're hopeful, I would say, at this year-end recap that, we can maybe do some processing. We
Yeah.
can maybe do some digestion. It is the solstice today, after all.
Mm.
And once we've gotten this out of our system, we can tackle 2026 in full intention,
Yes.
full power, full earnest.
I kind of love that we're meeting when it's like the darkest point of the year. Now, like the light gains in the sky as the sun moves through Capricorn. So this is the
Mm.
perfect moment to be in this kind of area of like digesting everything that
Hmm.
has come before we rise in light and move through 2026.
One thing I did want to call out is, of course, we did have that beautiful, I say everything is beautiful, but it was a
Mm.
beautiful new moon in
Yeah.
Sagittarius conjunct the galactic center that also features this solstice. And when you think about in your natal chart, maybe even putting it together, right? I want you to look at Sagittarius and Capricorn in your chart. I want you to see where those two things are side by side in your chart. Because Sagittarius is the corrective, or sorry, Capricorn is the corrective force for that Sagittarius optimism. And
Mhm.
so when you think about a new seeding of faith, perspective, expansion of vision, goals even, right? Like you think about the Sagittarius, abundance for all. You gotta look at the Capricorn chart and think, all right, this is where the rebirth will happen for me to
Yeah,
bring that type of mentality into the world. So
absolutely. It's where
this
you manifest it.
before we dive into this year, oh my God, like it's so overwhelming already to think
I
about.
know.
Just a lay of the land, folks. We are going to be covering almost like a rundown of this year's highlights, major transits. We're going to talk through some major themes that we have thought of as a function of the progression of those transits. And then we're kind of going to go through a chronological sort of what happened in Jan. Some events, we might pull up some
Remember
charts.
January? That was 10 years ago.
The fact that we started the year in a literal fire and then ending the year in an emotional dumpster fire, like
I think we bookended this year on like two pretty massive shootings or like things of violence too. So,
we
yikes.
also we also bookended the year on losing literally like dads of cinema, these the great elders of cinema. And it's like David Lynch, Rob
Mhm.
Reiner. I'm just like, oh my God, this was a really interesting year of shedding, yet here we
Yeah.
are again at the beginning almost. So it's
Yes.
like if you could have summarized this past
Yeah.
year into one catchy Camille Jupiter in the third statement, what would Camille say?
My takeaway from this year was this was the year of divine discontent. Not that 2024, 3 or 2 weren't like, bringing that up, but I think this was a year where we could not ignore how unsettled things have felt inside of us and also how they have kind of been reflected back to us in the world. When I think
Mm,
about this year, and as you said, like shedding, I think about how many planets and important points like cross that threshold between fire and water with like Aries
hmm
Pisces, but also Mars retrograde in Leo, going back into Cancer. And it was really this year of like, not yet. Ooh, the new start is kind of there, but we got to go back into these water signs. We got to integrate.
hmm
We got to feel something. We got to process something. Then we get our new fresh start. And I think even in the back and forth of those movements is like frustration and that discontent and
mm,
that like kind of riling up. So that's kind of how I'm ending this year. It just feels like a year where so many things were ruffled and we move into
mm.
2026 thinking pretty seriously about how we're going to shape our actions moving forward in light of that.
Divine discontentment.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. I mean, with Saturn and Neptune.
I'm gonna say as a Neptune gal, I feel like Neptune is like really the backdrop, like the large energetic backdrop for all of that, and all the smaller
hmm
movements, of course, triggering that same kind of subject matter. But yeah,
hmm
hella
hmm
discontent.
Yeah. All right. Amen to that. If you would like a word with Camille. Camille does do readings, so
Me
she
too.
can help you process your inherent divine discontent.
Yes.
From my end, it was very interesting because, yes, there was a lot of divine discontentment, and you take your lead from Neptune as
Mhm.
your outer planet guide, if you
Yeah.
will. I am a Plutonian person, and so I take my guide from Pluto, which, pros and cons to either, right? Neptune and
Yes.
Pluto.
Yes.
Um, but for me this year, it felt like a big theme that kept coming up, or at least it finally got cinched over this weekend. This notion of from womb to womb again.
Yes.
And maybe for me, it's not just about this one year. 2025 would have been that kind of womb to tomb
Mm.
type of energy that maybe Pluto moving into Aquarius first kickstarted in 2023, that then ushered in this sort of collective different framework. And now at this precipice of 2025 into 2026, we get to womb again. We get to come out of the womb. We get to be rebirthed in the way that really needs to happen so
Yeah.
that this type of parenting, this type of toxic parenting under the institutional systems that be can no longer continue the tyranny of this abuse. So,
Yeah.
it is really profound, right, with Jupiter in Cancer, with the idea of Aries starting fresh, right? There was a lot of these things, but just in general, I just felt like all of us, even clients, amidst this liminal space, and we've been talking about this chrysalis, like this is the year right now we finally get to leave the womb proper and
Yeah.
develop. So crossing fingers, it's
Crossing fingers because birth is violent and it's messy and it's hard and it takes you to the precipice of death, literally and symbolically. And so, yeah,
Oh
fingers
my
crossed.
God, fingers crossed. Well, we go back to the beginning of the year,
Hmm.
to the
You remember
womb.
that, folks?
It was so funny because I wrote in my journal, like I went back to read my journal, and the first line I wrote on Jan 1, which I literally laughed out loud,
This is going to be
was,
my year. I'm just kidding.
yeah, I feel confident, ease, and
Yeah.
flow going in this year. I'm like, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. I like could even hear the bullshit off my pen now, knowing and understanding what I experienced this year. I'm like thinking to myself, how many of us were walking around with that false sense of like confidence in a way, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be fine, but really like you can't bypass it. You have to really be in it so that you can make the changes, right? Also very Saturn Neptune coded.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's kind of like when I was looking back at the news of January, it's kind of like day one, we did not have a break. Like there was no optimism riding off the coattails of the election in November. Like spirits were pretty low. And I really think that Saturn Neptune, there's a hopelessness or disillusionment or lack of faith in how is this structure going to continue? Yeah,
I think this was the year that maybe people realized like the government's not gonna come save you. The powers that be, the United Nations, the governing bodies, the watchdogs, no one's gonna save you if you do not save yourself.
totally. And also a year of realizing that these things, the government, like it's this word, it's this idea, it's a bunch of fallible humans.
hmm
We see that clearer than ever this year. These systems are upheld by humans who are just
hmm
inherently weak and have their own biases, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it just feels so Saturn Neptune of like, let's look behind the veil of this like structure or this castle or empire that we've revered. And it's just
hmm
dudes. It's just dudes with a
Just
clown painted on their faces.
I was just thinking, like, what event can I pull from a Jan
This is
this
the one,
year?
if there
I
is one.
mean, if there was ever one, it would be we started off the year with Voldemort rising, the presidential inauguration of 2025, the coldest one on record, if you remember. They
Ooh,
had to move it inside.
I do. I
You remember
remember that
that?
now.
You remember
Yeah.
that Carrie Underwood had like that very bad moment on the microphone, and that was also when people realized Carrie Underwood may be more MAGA than she has presented.
Right.
So Jesus take the wheel on that one. But when you see Sun and Pluto starting the year like that, like you already know this year is already in for a
Profound
reckoning.
changes. Yeah, and I think Mars retrograding Cancer also just highlights like starting off not only this inauguration, but this year, like with like pain, like it's
Mm-hmm.
tender. I think about the Sibley chart, like this year poking on our Cancer stellium, and yeah, it just feels very ouchy. I even don't like Saturn with exalted Venus in Pisces because she doesn't get to really exalt. She's
Are
kind
you
of
exulting?
besieged by both Saturn and Mars in this chart. And so, yeah, it just doesn't feel very exalted. It just feels blue.
There
Mhm.
was a lot of, I would say, conversations you and I had this year around like Malefic's actually like showing up well, but
Yeah.
this one was a little difficult to stomach at the time.
Yeah.
And as you said, I pulled up the Sibley chart just to
Hmm.
see the effect of the inauguration on the Sibley chart, as you and rightly as you pointed out, right? That Mars and Cancer poking literally on top of the Mercury
Yeah.
retrograde.
Yeah. I also see that as like Trump and his administration trying to commandeer or really like force, like, this is the messaging, or this is how we view America, this is how it's going to be.
hmm
Yeah. It's just
hmm
torturous, torturesome.
It's interesting because again, we talked about this idea of like you going back to the womb, right? Like Mars
Hmm.
and Cancer. It's a very hostile womb,
That's right.
admittedly. So when you think about again the idea of like, oh, make America great again, what is that sentiment really saying? It would be going back to a more hostile environment for not everyone, but for a
Yeah.
good portion of people who do not happen to be white or Christian nationalists.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think of Mars there as like taking away or separating or like, making America great again. Like not only was that point in time violent or like not great for a lot of people, but the process of getting back there from 2025 is
hmm
also so bloody and so violent. And so it's
hmm
starting off kind of like this administrative or political year really with Mars right on top of that Mercury just says something about like just the pain or like the tenderness or like nefarious activities behind the scenes.
That was also the time of the LA fires, of
Yeah.
course, and that actually happened earlier in the year. Like it hadn't, like this was already late, Jan 20th. It was already a late start to the year, even though with the Mars retrograde starting the year, you would anticipate it being a slow start. It was completely not that at all. Like it was devastating, the LA
Yeah.
fires. And just even the idea of, like you have an administration now, right? Like what happens with aid, what happens with all these things? Like that's a very Mars Cancer thing as well. At the time, it would have also been opposing the United States Pluto,
Mm.
right? So again, you're starting off the year under very, very hostile circumstances. I mean, and what would you say to sort of this notion of, Mars retrogrades come in to signify a much needed course correction or a change of action because it's
Yeah.
what we're doing right now is not consistent with the mission. Like, how do you see that embodied by sort of like this new administration coming in? Like, I think I've struggled with this a lot this year in terms of
Mm.
as an astrologer trying to make sense of the transits and how they're going to play out and not it being more destruction for more people. But I mean, it's almost maddening this year in a way
It
how the transit
is.
showed up.
Yeah, if I think I understand your question, I
hmm
definitely see Mars retrograde as like a course correction or like needing to go back and see like where have my previous actions landed me and do I like them? I think that's
hmm
twofold for when you put Mars in Cancer because it's about now
hmm
I'm going into the inner world in a lot of
hmm
ways. And so when I think and I connect that to the administration, I mean, not to kind of keep pulling on this Cancer archetype of like the crybaby, but there is something so emotionally
hmm
immature or so emotionally kind of riled up about Mars retrograde in Cancer that I
hmm
see this administration moving forward on a set of like ideals or a set of emotions and not under a sense
mm
of clarity. Like even at the time, Mars is sextiling the Neptune of the nation, right? So it's like this is the way to go. This feels emotionally correct. So that's how
hmm
I would view it. It really depends on the quality of the emotional life and the emotional
hmm
intelligence with respect
hmm
to how that Mars retrograde is going to actualize. And in our government, I think we saw it actualize in really really painful ways. Like, you don't belong here. You're not an American. We're kicking you out.
hmm
We're firing you. We're dismantling this. Like, destruction on top of destruction based on the emotional impulses of a few in charge.
Yeah, Mars and Cancer is very mean girls coded. You can't sit
Yeah.
with us.
Ugh, yeah. Which is funny, but like in a national context, it's awful. Because I was one of the people they don't want to sit next to anymore.
But here's the thing. It's not like they aren't allowing type of like foreign investment or stuff, right? Like as you see later on in the year, there is a reorganization of even how the United States is choosing to ally itself with like foreign power, that means for us, what that means
Yeah.
for our entertainment. Like you literally just texted me the other day, like all this Saudi
Yeah,
money.
what
It's
is going on
like
with Saudi Arabia?
it's so interesting because to me, I'm like, oh my God, evil empire is
Hmm.
me, realigning with another evil empire. And so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, great. What are we like? What is the world actually like showing us? And I think that's where, like, with the astrology, I'm like, I normally use astrology to help me keep a level head and hope and optimism. And I still believe in it, but I think this was the year that really expanded sort of the need for me to be a lot more objective with my
Ah,
astrology, which
yes.
sucks.
Yeah, I felt that call when Jupiter entered Cancer, and it feels like everything accelerated with respect to things falling to shit. It's like it's time
Hmm.
to re-examine what it means for Jupiter to be exalted in Cancer. And it's not a story of straightforward luck at all.
No.
Maybe we'll get into it, but it's so much about capacity and things just making you
Mm.
feel in big, unprecedented ways. And what are you going to do with that? And that's
Hmm.
just painful.
Honestly, I know I said earlier, like we're gonna go through the transits first, but now that we're in the groove of conversation,
Yeah.
it's all just gonna naturally come up as you're talking about transits throughout the years. So bear with us,
Yeah.
y'all, because this is as organic of a conversation as you're gonna get, in the spirit of, Saturn and Neptune and Pisces and going with the flow. But what was also interesting, okay, so these were all like terrible things that were happening at the same time. Maybe like for some people, this was the greatest inauguration day of their lives, right? But there's this other sort of creative like quality to the year that we just came out of. Bad Bunny, I believe, dropped Debí tirar más fotos in Jan of this year.
Mm.
And that became like, I remember looking on my TikTok distinctly, scrolling through LA Fire situations, and then also watching people post like that, Debbie tiramos photos, like we should have taken more pictures, and it's all the pets and it's the
Mm.
grandpa. And I'm just like in one giant, like emotional pool because I'm like,
Yeah.
God bless you, Bad Bunny,
Yeah.
because this album was so needed at the time.
I think musicians have really been healing
Hmm.
balm this year in so many ways. Yeah.
I mean, Bad Bunny had a very crazy year,
He did. He had a great
and
year.
he started off strong. And so, all to say, like, I think he was a really important case study for one of those situations where, like, let me launch something during like a malefic time or a time that may not seem to be, direct or full force or full power. But because he was using the transits, the Mars retrograde in Cancer, in the way that it was really intended, I think it then promoted this beautiful success. Like, success
Mm.
isn't the end goal, but to me, this year was also a big year teaching that if you do something with the goal of success, it's not going to come to fruition. But if you do something with the goal of, I'm here to really offer a POV or perspective that can be helpful, it will
Mm.
inherently be successful.
So that's
Because,
what you think the story of Mars and Cancer through his music was like
hmm,
healing or was more tenderizing or that kind of helpful
totally.
nostalgia.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, because he was one, first of all, cancer, a
Yeah.
big theme was again that sense of belonging and
Yeah.
home. And as a Latino artist, right? Like, especially this year, I think a lot of us had to reconcile, especially if you weren't born in this country or if you were
Yeah.
born in this country, but you are not white, right? Like, what does it mean to feel unsafe in home, or what does it mean to feel a sense of belonging and a
Mm.
desire for that? And I think his album turning into this sort of more emotional reflection on his identity and his sense of cultural upbringing was exactly what Mars Cancer retrograde was trying to do, almost on the opposite side of what you were saying. Like, I'm not sure they got the memo on how they were supposed to do it. I
Yeah.
think Bad Bunny got the memo very
Yeah.
loud and
And that's
clear.
one of those situations, and not to paint with a broad brush, but artist and as an artist myself, like the emotional capacity is a little bit more dialed in. So that there
Hmm.
is a little bit more of this propensity to use difficult transits through water signs to produce really good art.
Hmm.
Which it seems like
Yeah.
even if you created it under a different sky, even the fact that it's coming out right during this time is a
Hmm.
resonance. So yeah, it's just like different uses of that Cancerian energy. Like we can see the full spectrum of how it could be positive and how it can be, I guess, negative or life depleting.
Hmm.
I also just noticed he has Venus in Aries, and that will be a theme for like many artists this year who had big years. They had a bit, lots
Yeah.
of Venus in Aries had big artistic years this year. I'm happy about it. And it's Venus in
Yes.
Scorpio. So Marshall Venuses. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, right? Like if you start the year in a Mars retrograde, you also then move into a Venus retrograde.
Oof.
Like the first half of the year, if you felt like you could not remember details of anything, it's because the retrogrades just like kind of flowed into each other,
That's so true. Yeah.
And you're just like, wait a minute, now we're out of Mars, but we're into Venus. Like, what are we trying to do
Mhm.
here? But to your point, as you so astutely noted, like that bunny does have the Venus in Aries, right? So like if your chart had early degree Venus in Aries, you had late degree Venus in Pisces, you had Mars, Cancer, you had Scorpio, right? Like these energies would have been very active this year.
Yes, 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 yes. And I think of Mars with Venus as like, the two lovers chasing each other in the sky. There's something
Hmm
so potent and fertile and impactful about those two planets
hmm
in the soul of an artist. So I'm not at all
hmm
surprised that we got so much. And the music has been charged, at least what I've listened to. It's been
hmm
pop, right? But it's touching at something, which I think is like,
hmm
yes, Mars started the year retrograde in Cancer. It's kind of set the tone in that way.
hmm
So I see that as coming up through him, but through some other folks too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think about even the shift of like the Jupiter Gemini year of the previous
Hmm.
year, right? And, what were the songs of the summer, right? It was Brat, it was Espresso, it
Yeah.
was like
Fun stuff.
HOTTOGO. Yeah, like it was fun. But then this year it was like all of a sudden it wasn't just enough. You couldn't just have fun. There has to, I mean, you can have fun and joy is resistance at the end of the day, but like it had to invite realness and depth to the
Yes.
conversation.
Yes. And as we were talking about before we recorded, friction, just that
Mm.
friction sometimes just produces such great art.
Speaking of someone who used friction in a way that
I
helped
was thinking about him.
propel to the next status, Kendrick Lamar. Granted,
Yeah.
most of his beef did take place last year. Camille and I did
Mm.
do a specific Kendrick beef episode, the first episode of this channel, all the way back in Feb. So go back to that and check it out because we talk about the Super Bowl performance there. But I mean, this was a huge year for Kendrick also. That was an
Yes.
incredible Super Bowl performance.
Yeah, picking up on what you said about like, Bad Bunny using this moment correctly, talk about someone else who used this Mars retrograde and Cancer moment correctly, reclaiming a community, reclaiming voice, speaking truth to power, but again, doing it through this subliminal like artfulness, which kind of makes Mars in Cancer a little bit passive in that way. It's like not direct through the art, but
Hmm
nonetheless, it's someone who like reclaimed a kind of cultural empowerment that I think was so needed at the time, especially right after the inauguration.
That halftime show was one of the most, I don't even have like words for it. Like the impact, the historical impact, the musical impact, like
Yeah.
it was all based on a beef, but like really it was such a powerful moment of education and reclamation.
That's exactly
So
right. Yeah.
when you think about again that idea of Mars poking the United States Mercury, right? Like for him as a vessel, he is that Martian figure poking into and taking
Yeah.
up space.
And he's saying, let me show you the real story. Let me tell you what
Hmm
actually happened. Oh,
hmm
Mercury retrograde in the eighth house in the United States Sibley chart. We manufacture the messages we want you to see. We're not telling the full truth. So I
hmm
see his Mercury in Cancer too, but also his Mars in Cancer is like, yeah, no, it didn't happen that way.
hmm I don't think I ever realized this, but his Chiron in Gemini on the United States Mars, like, I mean,
Mhm.
a Mars Chiron activation, like, what do you even say about that? And how did it come out in the performance here?
Well, I think we discussed Sun Chiron, in Kendrick Lamar's chart as like he's the healer who has chosen music as the vessel, and
Hmm
his healing and the work that he has done in the hip hop community, but also I think politically, what his music has kind of like moved has
hmm
been agitating for some. Like I think of
hmm
To Pimp a Butterfly, I think of Geraldo Rivera saying, I think hip hop has been the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to the community. Like even like using that sound bite for like, yeah, no, I'm pissing y'all off
hmm
because I'm naming something or I'm attempting to retrieve some kind of primordial venom that's just been in the Black community and I'm talking about it. And I think the fact that it's on the United States Mars, like, ouch, you're
hmm
airing some things, or I don't like the way you're saying this, or I'm gonna like pick it apart in all the ways that he has been picked apart. But simultaneously, the function of Chiron with any planet is to heal it. And
hmm
so used correctly or like maybe used to the fans of his music. Like his music has been corrective for a Black American, growing up in
Mhm.
this society. Like it
Mhm.
feels something, it soothes an agitation. So it's working in both ways here.
It's very interesting because obviously this year Bad Bunny was announced also
Yeah, that's
as
right.
the Super Bowl performer next year, right? So again, you have artists with something to say getting highlighted on the biggest stages. Like there's a
Yeah,
Neptunian element here, the
totally.
idea of service to the greater. It's more than just my ego,
Yeah.
right? It is really like this is helping heal divisiveness even though there are people who are going to argue this is going to incite more divisiveness, that's a very
That's
Mars
right.
Chiron thing as well. It's almost like you have to point out the differences in order to solve the differences.
Yeah, double-edged sword, totally. It's gonna
hmm
poke.
And something that just came to mind too was like, I remember, and maybe this is my memory, but on my side of the internet, but like some folks were complaining, like, I can't understand what he's saying, like there should be subtitles. And
Who,
lol, that
Kendrick or Bad Bunny?
Kendrick,
Okay.
exactly, exactly. Because then I was like, wait a minute, when Bad Bunny came back out, right? And everyone's like, we don't understand Spanish. It's like, interesting. Like the same type of vernacular, the same type of criticism around being understood, speak English. And especially if that is like a comment or criticism being levied against Kendrick Lamar and sort of
Mm,
black slang or hip hop or rap, right? Like it's incredibly ironic that people don't also recognize how much of language is lifted from Ebonics or black slang. And like
yeah.
and it's like you criticize it, but at the same time it's like this is culture. This is everything we're pulling
Yeah.
from.
And also
Crazy.
maybe it's just because, I'm an artist and I have Mercury, Neptune. I'm the Neptune girl in the room. Like, I don't need to understand what you're saying to feel and understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
No. Like I can listen
Mm-hmm.
to it and still get something from it. And open yourself, like you don't understand Spanish, you're confused about Bad Bunny. Just open yourself up to experiencing it and not understanding it. It's totally okay. You can still
Mm-hmm.
get something from it.
I mean, for everything else, there's a Duolingo for that.
Yeah.
R.I.P. the bird, right? Did the mascot die this year? Like they took the
Yeah, like
mascot away?
the owl. I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Camille,
Speaking of things that have just happened this year.
Camille and I were like again trying to plan this episode, and then also I'm like, oh my God, we need like an in memoriam section,
Yeah.
and like the Duolingo bird popped into my head. I'm like, oh my
Let me
God,
add that.
we lost so many people this year, including the Duolingo mascot.
And
Like,
the penny. We lost the penny.
we
The
did
penny
lose the
died.
penny. You know what? If the penny did not go during a Uranus Taurus last haul, like I would have been very surprised. That would have been a
Right.
very resilient penny. And at that point, then you should up the value of the penny.
Yes.
Okay. But the fact that it costs more to make the penny actually kind of to me tells me more about America right now. Like we're putting ourselves through more hoops when really the solution is just like to not put yourself through all these like, oh, you
Oops.
got, yeah, I don't know, like we've overcomplicated the system.
Yeah. It's very satirizing with Mars in Gemini in the seventh house. Not choosing the most straightforward way forward.
Ugh, classic. But speaking of other people that did not choose the most straightforward way forward, we
Mm.
get to also another important time. Oh my God, this Feb was actually low-key a very good Black History Month. Granted,
Mm.
for the artists, not
Yes.
maybe for actual Black people in the country, given the way that benefits and everything are taken away.
Mhm.
We also obviously had a very, very important year for Beyonce, who won finally Album of the Year
Yes.
at the Grammys for Cowboy Carter. I
Mm.
think I actually do have the Grammys chart. So let me actually pull up the Grammys chart just to bring us to that moment. There we go.
Love it.
Ah, okay, Feb second. All right, so Feb started off on a solid note at the very least. Like we had inauguration, and then we went to Super Bowl and Album of the Year. Like
Some relief
so,
in the from the culture. Thank you.
we've got a Mars retrograde moment, delivering the final promise, the long-awaited promise.
Yeah, delivering the victory. So I think in this case, I feel like for individuals this year, we've seen how malefic transits give. I think maybe in the collective, we see how malefic transits are just like, all right, I'm gonna just make it more malefic. But Beyonce is one of those stories, right? She's kind of like a Mars return success. So was Doechii, who also has Mars
hmm
in Cancer. Yeah, so just like I love as you said it, delivering on the promise and delivering on like the win after so
hmm
much labor and so much work and kind of cementing not only the end of a Mars cycle, but also the beginning, maybe of a new one and how that changes her artistry.
I think also very profound because obviously, like, this was a big year for her, but also her mom, because obviously the
Yeah,
matriarch
yeah.
memoir was released, and Camille and I also did an episode on that if you want to go check that out. But again, like the idea of maternal and women rising was also like a very big theme this year,
Totally.
not just even in entertainment, but across the board. In terms of Beyonce's chart, I mean, I remember like that meme was so like her reaction was so viral, right?
And I'm just now seeing Uranus on her Chiron in Taurus. And I think one of the ways that Chiron and Taurus in the second house, which we know now, was that something we found out this year, girl? Her
That was
birthday?
something was because of matriarch, because it was in the book. And I
I
think
thought that was
before,
10 years ago.
I think it was like you found it in like the songbook for Cowboy Carter. Either way, it was all
Yeah,
part
that's
of
where it
the
was found
Cowboy
first.
Carter. Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
then I
yeah.
listened to it and she said 9:04 p.m. in the actual book. Anyway, I say that to say I think one of the ways Chiron and Taurus in the second house can show up is like I'm not valued for what I give, for what I make. And I love Uranus on Chiron as like the shakeup win or the upset win or the shock and the sudden win,
Mm-hmm.
kind of reversing that pain story or just agitating it or, toiling it up in a way, but ultimately for victory because it was sextile Mars.
Yeah, wow. Oh, I love that. I love that very much. And I mean, there's a lot to be said, right, again, about Beyonce's role in society. This is something that we have talked about, like the idea of public figures and what is their responsibility. And I think also another big
Mm.
theme you saw this year, with all the Aries, with all this sort of rebirth, right? Like, we want new parents. We want parents that can lead. We want parents that use their platform for good. How does Beyonce do that? And my argument is always, she doesn't do it explicitly. She does it through her work,
Yeah.
with her Libra stellium, through who she works with, her collaborations, and the idea that she has opened up country music in a different way that gives other people way more access, even though she might not be the sole benefactor of that.
Mm.
Like it has come after a lot of hard work, but that is how you build legacy, and that's how you really push collective forward.
I
Like,
love that.
ugh.
I love what you said also many episodes ago about how Pluto buries things. And that just
Mm.
makes me see her Pluto-Venus conjunction a little bit differently, as though, like, yes, it's coming through the art, but also it just takes that Venus down to a darker place. Like it's not going to be as forthcoming. It's not going to be as like politically, right, active,
Mm-hmm.
but it will be artistic and subliminal in what it does
Mm-hmm.
produce later on. But I see that Pluto as even deepening and like
Mm-hmm.
darkening, not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
But in actually a generative way, that Libra
Yeah.
stellium. Yeah.
Because you and I read Matriarch, right? You got exposure to, again, what Tina wanted to share, curation, Venus, Pluto also still showing up in different ways. But you also realistically understand that for Black artists, minority artists in this country to rise up to this level of success, wealth, prominence, that is a very short amount of time, like from literally the horrific oppression
Yeah.
that her family had to internalize, right? Like she's
Yeah.
only like a couple generations away. So it's not
Yeah.
like you're making it sound as if she's like been this at top for so long. It's like she broke her pattern. Like she
That's right.
broke out of that cycle. So I get that we are eager for everyone to get to the top of that mountain, but like realistically, if you view Beyonce as a human, not as a deity or a myth or someone who it can do no wrong, that
Yeah.
Neptune, like
Mm.
she has done a lot by virtue of just showing what's possible.
Yeah. Ooh, and Neptune as the most elevated planet, here to show what is possible. Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was fab. And you know what? You know what? Now I'm thinking about it. Did Sinners come out shortly after that? That came out in April,
I think
I
it came out in
think.
April.
It came out in April. Okay, we'll get to Sinners in a second because this is also, again, if you think
But the
about
spring was great for just
this,
Black culture. Winter
it,
into spring. Yes, it was Neptune, I think. Yeah.
I think so, because Neptune moved into Aries March 29th. So really this would have been this beautiful
Yeah.
29-degree Pisces energy, which you can maybe argue because we are very much in this energy right now. We're in the same type of
Yes.
energy as this time. Like, I mean, I can almost think more cultural wins, big cultural wins coming up at the award shows, maybe leading up to the Saturn and Neptune
I
conjunction
think
in
so.
Aries.
Yeah, I look forward to this award season as being one with like prominent winners in some kind of way. Yeah.
Yes.
And isn't it this the first Met Gala with like the new board and everything? Yeah.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
mean this was also a year, and we'll probably talk about it too when we get to May, but like this was the year that we had Superfine Black tailoring
Yes.
as well. So when we say like, this was a great year for Black culture, again, I wanna highlight and emphasize we understand the world is on fire and that people are suffering across the board. But when you talk about the importance of cultural representation,
Mhm.
inspiration, Black culture had a very dominant spring.
It did.
Had a very dominant spring.
Undeniable.
Amidst all this really goodness, LOL, I love that you've put in the Zelensky meeting fiasco.
Yeah.
Like,
I looked back at like what was like the highest trending, just like my Gemini cursory Google searches,
yeah,
like
yeah,
what was the
yeah.
highest trending like political thing that happened this year? And it pointed to that Zelensky awful meeting
Oh my God.
of just him being bullied by two man children who,
Was
uh,
was that the one with the suit situation?
yes, like he
Oh my
showed up,
God.
I think just wearing a nice like black top, and he's like, "Why did you wear a suit?"
Was I was gonna say, was he wearing a quarter zip? Because he would have been so
Ahead of the
on.
time.
But I realized I have never actually LOL in this new iteration of like pop culture, astrology, politics. Like I've never actually looked at Zelensky's
Okay, chart.
chart. And I
Look at that
mean,
Mars.
wow.
I pointed at the screen. Look at it. This was around the Mars
LOL.
retrograde time, right? It hadn't re-entered, I don't
Hmm.
think, Leo just yet, but he has Mars retrograde at 0 degrees of Leo. So it would make sense that a prominent conflict or fiasco
Hmm.
surrounding him and his identity, Leo, opposite his sun,
Hmm.
would have happened. Yeah.
Oh my God. Honestly, I'm like getting stressed looking at his chart because, as much as we said also, right, like we had Venus and Aries with Bad Bunny's chart, and if you had like early degree Aries placements, this year would have felt a little hot. Same with Libra. Okay, it's the
Yeah.
opposite sign. But really the hot degree also you're thinking about is 8, because that was when we had the solar eclipse in Aries. We also had the Venus retrograde station at that degree. So 8 was really important. And he has his 9 degree South Node in Aries. When you think of
Mm,
war,
yeah.
I can't think of a more profound symbolism. And I can't help but think of this Mars in Leo as being like the embodiment of Trump, because Trump also obviously has Mars in Leo.
Yeah.
So, like,
So does JD Vance? No, JD Vance has Mars in Scorpio, but he has
Data
Leo
Vance,
rising. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Just same, but diff. Okay. One's more underground
Yeah.
versus one's more of the king. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's also, I mean, his chart is getting very hit by Pluto, with
Oof.
the Chiron at 1 degree in Taurus. I mean, he's about to go through his Chiron return next
Mm.
year, like in June. So you would imagine that June, July timeframe, because I know a lot of astrologers are calling, I mean, rightfully so, like Feb and July of 2026 will be very loud, like in the collective, and very significant for the United States. You can't help but obviously think about the implications of the Russia-Ukraine war really coming to a head next year, especially with this Chiron
What are those
return.
transits that they're looking at in
So,
February and May?
so Feb, I would imagine it's that first solar eclipse,
Yeah.
because that's also hitting the United States Aquarius moon, I
Mhm.
believe. And then in July, you're thinking about that full moon in Leo with Jupiter in Leo, like on the nodes. Like there's
Okay.
just,
With Pluto. Yeah.
yeah, either way, like it's a very Plutonian. I mean, again, don't get me wrong. I do think this is a year for a lot of really big moments in the culture, pop culture, and politics, but uh, similar to this year, it will be, I think, still a doubling down of almost like the bifurcation, the good
Mhm.
versus evil of it all.
Yeah.
Will
I don't know where this came from, but I just thought of Jupiter and Leo as like a new king ascends. I think
mm,
something will happen with a transference of power,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
however it occurs. But that's what that makes me think of, especially because it's entering
Mm-hmm.
both of their first houses, both Trump and JD
Mm-hmm.
Vance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I
Huh.
mean, that June-July time frame also features the UFC fight, right? Like on the White House, and like all these like dumb things, that is like, oh my God, yeah, that's so Jupiter Leo coded. Like, and you
Hmm.
see it and you're like, oh my God, is that like inadvertently like what kings would do with eclipses, right? Like, let me throw out all the distractions or like the
Uh,
decoys so that the real
yeah.
thing won't actually manifest. Like,
Yeah.
I can maybe see that situation also. Like, I'm gonna send you off and like you're the fall guy now. But again, July. Pay
We'll see.
attention. Pay attention, everyone. But
We're just
also,
looking ahead. We gotta chomp on this year.
I know we're chomping ahead, but yeah, with the, also T's and P's to Zelensky because he will be going through a pretty difficult, I would imagine, a difficult year.
Yeah.
Let's see, we're still in Feb. We're only just in Feb. We go to March. March was in my head Oscars.
Yeah.
Anora won.
Start of the
Won.
Venus retrograde story.
That was the start of the Venus retrograde story
I like how you put egg prices, LOL.
because eggs were so expensive at the
That's such a
time.
Venus Aries retrograde story. Like just the price of something, the value
Oh
of
my God.
something
Also
being
because it
amplified.
was in Mikey Mind because it was in Aries, there was this notion, and because it was also Mars retrograde in Cancer, Leo, right? Like
Hmm.
there was just even this idea of like survival and like eggs being such an integral part of like people's diets, except
Yes.
if you're vegan, I guess. But like, I don't know, in New York, it was like the Hunger Games, even though we are
Yeah.
going to have a formal Hunger Games next year, the
I
Patriot
saw
Games.
that.
But like,
Dumb.
what the hell? You know what? And that at the time felt like the worst thing possible. And there was like Doge had just come in, Elon had come in to make everything more efficient. Like when you think about a Venus retrograde in Aries and Pisces, like
Hmm. Yeah.
confusion and mayhem. But I pulled up Mikey Madison's chart because, again, as we are highlighting, she also had a prominent early degree Aries in her third house. I believe her time is pretty good, double A. So
Yeah.
she also had Mercury in Pisces, which Venus retrograde in Pisces. So you see how she has, and a Mars in retro. Oh my God, I forgot she had a Mars retrograde natally as well.
Yes. And so I think like during Mars retrograde times, if you're born with Mars retrograde, there's like
Hmm.
something happening, right? Some resonance. Look out for that. But I
Hmm.
love because you said Venus stationed at what 8 degrees of Aries, and she has her benefic Jupiter there. So that just
Yes.
feels like so good. And Mercury like highlighting like performance, your creative vision, your creative voice, and kind of just reestablishing her as kind of like a heavyweight in some way.
It's very, I would say this was the year of like the ingenue or like again, like the
Mm,
rise of new Hollywood even because you can kind of think about Hollywood kind of falling on itself a little bit right now, right? Like there's the merge with Netflix, like Netflix is
yeah.
taking over. Like what does this really mean for art? And I think you also, had a little bit of a dearth between like who's a real celebrity from the new generation, right? You had your George Clooney's, you had your Brad Pitts, you had your Julia Roberts, like these are established and like J-Law and Emma Stone, like there was like a middle, but then there was
Mm,
really like not a whole lot of diversity or a whole lot of opening. And
yeah.
so for Mikey to win for a role that was about her being a stripper was also very Venus retrograde and Aries coded. And I think surprised a lot of people, unless you knew the astrology, of course, in which you're like, oh my God, on brand theme, let's freaking
Yes.
go.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
She potentially could have a very good year ahead as well. Jupiter moving through Leo, Pluto, like Mikey
Mm,
is here to stay. This is a real deal, not just a one
yeah.
and done, but she is very intentional with what she does. I think she's doing a movie with Kirsten Dunst where she is a mermaid or something, or they find like a
Oh.
reptile, but it's like very indie, a very
It
quirky.
feels very Uranus on her ascendant. She's meant to do some weird art house type stuff. Yeah.
Right? I'm so glad she's sticking to that and not
Yes.
just because I think she turned down Star Wars or something, like a big, big blockbuster.
I feel
So,
like with Uranus on the ascendant, also South Node in Aquarius, so some kind of like soul memory of like, I need to be independent or follow my independent instincts. You'll just
mm-hmm.
have a way more fulfilled life, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about the
Mm.
Mars maybe square from the 10th house with respect to prominence, importance. Like, should we? I don't know. Maybe that'll be like a tension for her.
Mm.
Mikey, if you're
Mm.
listening, you need an astrologer. We always say just in
Always.
case. But I love that as her sticking to like what actually feeds me, not what feeds the Hollywood
Mm.
machine.
You know what? That's actually really, I think, interesting too, because it's very her director coded Sean Baker, because
Okay.
he is a very like indie kind of guy. Like
Yeah.
he and his movies all kind of hit, right? The Florida Project, and his is always let me explore stories on the fringe of society to bring them into the mainstream, which I do think is also a big theme about this year. It's
Yeah.
whatever outsider story we want to bring in to feel that realness, that depth, as we were alluding to as an artist, especially. But that Mars Scorpio, now that you've piloted that,
Mm.
squaring the Uranus, squaring her nodes,
Yeah.
does make me wonder who is really in her corner and who is managing her
That's what I was
career.
gonna say. With 10th house, it's about who are you listening to and who are
Hmm.
you giving power to or who are you kind of letting hijack, right, your way forward.
Hmm.
Really got to keep an eye on that.
I know she got some slack for the intimacy coordinator conversation because she had a big actor on actor moment with Pam Anderson. And Pam was talking about, like asking, "Oh, did you have intimacy coordinators on set?" And she was like, "Well, we didn't need to. I just trusted Strom or whatever, the intimacy of the scene, right?" I don't remember exactly the specifics, but I remember a lot of people were raising
I
eyebrows
remember that too.
with the nature of that conversation. And I think that's very Venus and Saturn and Taurus also on some
I
level.
was thinking it as like the square being highlighted because the
Mm,
Uranus things, like I don't need this. I felt comfortable. It was
mm,
just me and these other people. I felt fine. I didn't need someone to coach or to kind of
mm-hmm,
coerce that moment. But the backlash for
mm-hmm.
doing that, look, this is the standard. This is what we do. This is like the thing that we're doing. Very 10th house.
Hmm.
But how does the Venus
Yeah.
Saturn, how do you feel that coming in?
I mean, it makes sense just to me. I think of like Taurus as like indulgence of the flesh, you know? And so
Yeah.
when you're thinking about sex, it's similar to Scorpio, but this is for the art, right? And so when you
Mhm.
think about it, and so that's why I'm kind of like, hmm you know, it's a yes and situation. I
Mm.
trust that you felt you were in power, but at the same time, baby girl, you have not hit your sound return.
True.
So like exactly how much agency do you think you really had in that moment? And did you have the opportunity to really feel like you could say yes? So that Mars I'm looking at a little scrutinizingly, especially because
Mm.
it opposes Venus.
Yeah.
Tension, naturally
Yeah.
inherent. But I do think it did touch upon a bigger conversation because obviously with Venus retrograde in Aries, you're naturally thinking about the Venus retrograde in Aries back that kickstarted or helped bring in the Me Too movement really also. And so this year, it's almost like you saw the backlash to that, almost like a retreating of it, almost like, I don't even I can't even make sense because this was the year that
Mm.
Harvey Weinstein, I guess,
Mhm.
went to retrial and people were trying to defend it. Candace Owens was trying to defend not to say the Me Too movement, but just the idea of like, are people telling the truth about these complicated dynamics, man and woman? And
Mm.
so, again, during the retrogrades, it would make a lot of sense that these conversations would be coming up because we're all maybe revisiting our standards or revisiting assertion or maybe even revisiting what we did before that.
Yeah, like was it too much? Did we,
Hmm.
yeah, go overboard? Maybe need to like pull in ways that can be controversial and not helpful, but maybe also I understand like why someone would take that position. Interesting
Hmm.
retrograde things. Yeah.
Hmm. And when you think about Mars retrograde starting the year, course correction as a theme of
Hmm.
this year, how how do the events that have come up relate to the course correction from these cycles before?
Very true. But remembering it's Mars in Cancer, so that course correction and the idea of what the right forward motion is
Hmm.
subjective.
Exactly.
Totally subjective.
God
Yeah.
damn it. Like literally, oh my gosh.
The
This
water of
was,
this year has been so much, but yeah,
and the fact that we ended the year in a grand water
pretty
trine,
much. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Like,
Talk
I
about being in the womb, right? Yeah.
we're so in the womb. And it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like maybe we had to work through our fears the first half of the year so that we can then again, the second half of the year was being reborn. So
Yes.
maybe, as a message of optimism, if you didn't get what you thought you would have wanted after you did all the hard freaking work and you're like, where is my reward, universe? The universe sometimes is going to make sure you kind of reproach old situations with the new energy right before the blessings come in. And that to
Ugh.
me is what next year will bring if you
Yeah, I just
did.
had one of those aha moments of like looking back at my year because there is such a
Mm,
distinct line of demarcation between the first half and the last half. The last half I was
totally.
fighting for my life. But the first half I was fighting for my life too because I work for the federal government. But there was much more of a spirit of levity. And I think of Aries
Hmm.
and Uranus, sorry, Saturn and Uranus entering these air and fire signs, which is like a little bit
Hmm.
more spirited. And I
Hmm.
needed that spirit to take me through the rest of the
Hmm.
year. So I
Hmm.
totally feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. All to say again, the better is still to come.
Hmm.
And it's very dependent on how much work you've done this year, okay? And how you've responded to the second half of this year is the
Yeah.
caveat I will add.
And I think
But
so much of that work,
mm,
even with just Saturn and Pisces and thinking about Mars and Cancer is internal. So thinking about
hmm
how have you grown or cultivated, right, your inner world or your inner life? And does it set
hmm
you up to face the life that you have, or does it like set you up to like not maybe face the life that you have? And so dealing with that,
Very Neptunian,
very
right?
Neptunian.
Oh my God. Also, sidebar, March was when the tariff war really escalated and things got, well, eggs not necessarily related to tariffs, but like everything. I feel like tariffs was just such a big word. I was so surprised that was
Yeah.
not the word of the year, actually.
Whenever goes Venus goes haywire, Venus has like a traditional signification of money. It makes
Hmm.
sense that then the cost or the price of things would be amplified in the culture. Yeah.
Oh, you put in Yemen strike from the group chat. I like
Oh
even
my gosh.
forgot
You
that
remember that?
happened. No, I like.
I think that was under a Mercury retrograde, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. It's such a Mercury retrograde snafu. But yeah,
Yes,
just Pete
yes.
Hegseth and that was it the Slack or the Signal chat?
Oh my God, I can't believe that was March because I feel like didn't we just get another tech snafu in that group chat with like Vance or something recently?
Probably.
Like,
But it's like they accidentally added a journalist the first time.
oh my God, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God, Pete Hegseth. Like,
Yeah.
you know what? I've also like never looked at his chart, and I don't actually plan on looking at his chart, LOL. But oh,
I don't want to be exposed to that kind of
he's
darkness.
45 years old. Okay, he's midlifing right now. He's in his
Yes.
midlife quakes. What an interesting midlife story right now for him. I don't know what to
Yeah.
make of it.
Just a little boy. Department of War. Blah, 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 blah.
Oh my
Just
God,
whatever.
yes, this was the year that the Department of War got changed.
Oh yeah, the
Or,
Department of Defense or
oh,
Homeland.
yes,
Yeah, got changed to
yes.
Department of War.
Oh my
Yeah.
freaking God.
Okay, palette cleanser.
Palette cleanser now. We go to April. We get the Sinners release. So I
Yes.
pulled up Ryan Coogler's chart. I'm not gonna lie, April was like a crazy month as well, because obviously we're gonna be talking about Katy Perry and the Blue Origin trip. But Sinners to me was
Mm.
one of the most important movies of the year. And I would be very surprised if it did not show strongly at the Oscars, even
Mhm.
though this was released back in April, which is not conventionally a time that you would think of as like Oscar prominence. But
That's right.
I believe that with the transits and the cyclicality of it, I think they're going to do phenomenally well, phenomenally
Yeah.
well. But we never actually talked about it. I actually have an episode with Pooja, but you and I have not explicitly talked about Sinners. Having navigated this year, like how important, or like in your words, like why was this movie so important?
Well, it was important for a lot of reasons. First, it was like a groundbreaking deal between Ryan Coogler and Warner Brothers to like
Hmm.
retain the rights of his work, which made ruffled feathers, or I guess made people mad, like how dare you? Which is, I don't know if that happened around the Venus retrograde, but that makes sense, like reclaiming the value of one's art, right? Taking it
Hmm.
away from the power of like the systems or the structures that be. But also with respect to what's happening in the nation and, Black people, people of color, to have this movie come out and have it be such a celebration
Hmm.
of not only the visual kind of like talent of both Ryan and Michael B. Jordan, but also it telling a story that we haven't heard and showing us magic maybe that we haven't felt. It's hard to capture it now that it's in December. Like after I saw it, I probably would have
Hmm.
had more words to say. But it was
Mm.
just such, and especially with Neptune and Aries, to me it was such a mark of resistance and joy and reclamation
Hmm.
during what you've named so greatly, like this tomb womb time, right? It was kind of a spark or hope or something that reignited something in the culture that I think
Mm.
is always, always needed, but especially now, especially
Hmm.
then.
Oh, so profound. I mean, I pulled up the Sinners release,
Mhm.
and funny thing about the release was they were supposed to drop that
I
movie in
remember that.
Jan or something, or March, or like during the peak of the LA fires is really when they were supposed to drop it. But they wisely, I'm sure there was some Neptune divine intervention there, pushing the release to the moment Neptune moved into this was literally so fresh. This was 2 weeks of Neptune moving into Aries. Okay, so you get this like masterpiece, and
Yeah.
it is resistance. It is a horror story. It is at the same time also a story about celebrating like resilience and challenges. And,
Hmm.
you know, you highlighted earlier at the beginning of the year with the inauguration, like Venus and Saturn were coming together and Venus was
Yeah.
besieged. But here,
Yeah.
Venus and the North Node are together and Venus isn't as besieged as it was before. So there was a general, I think, warmth or better reception around things that were coming out at the time as well. Not
Yeah.
all. I say this to Blue Origin, but if you were being honest and genuine and really like, again, saying truth, not just holding up the status quo, this would have been a very important time.
Yeah, and Aries and Leo, the signs of Neptune and Mars respectively, are
Hmm
signs that speak truth and they're authentic and they want to get out of voice, so it makes sense. I love this moment.
hmm
Astrologically, it's gorgeous.
The fact that it's also the last day of Aries season, it's the Sun Chiron conjunction-ish, but it's
Yeah.
on Ryan's nodal axis.
Wow. Talk about a moment delivering recognition and promise for the individual, but
hmm
also, I think the North Node around this time was also in Aries or it was in
Oh,
Pisces and it just finished
hmm
Aries. So there was a little bit of a cultural resonance or like something happening
hmm
broadly that I think his the sun on his North Node is speaking to in him, but also like culturally is like this is a pivot or this is something bright and important and vivid
hmm
and it's going to be remembered for a
hmm
very long time.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, actually, now that you bring up even the nodal switch, right? We forgot to
Yeah.
mention, yes, the year started out with Mars retrograde, but then the immediate thing that happened right after was the node switching, literally like Jan 10th, Jan 11th, like very early in the year from Aries and Libra that we had been in since like July of 2023 during that gnarly Venus retrograde in Leo. And then now we move into Pisces Virgo. What would you say, or how have you processed that shift, and how do you feel like it's reflected in this last year?
Oh, so this is another one of the examples of like things moving from fire air back
Mm,
into like the earth water of it all. So again, like
mm,
needing to integrate or like sit a little bit longer with something. So wanting
mm,
to name that as like part of that thematic 2025 like thing.
mm,
Um, I see the North Node having left Aries, unfortunately, into Pisces as like a kind of a lack of clarity or kind of um, a moving into complacency or a desire to really actually want to ignore things. When I'm thinking
mm,
culturally and what I've experienced as like a federal worker, like that's kind of like the face I'm getting from it.
mm,
And I've seen the South Node in Virgo, again, in this context, as like a draining of competency, merit, precision, clarity, sense,
mm,
and us
mm,
moving in this Piscean direction, which is more governed by vibes and feelings and making America great again. What the fuck does that even mean? And you're doing it
mm,
really poorly. So I see it as a little bit of accelerant for the most
mm,
delusional and ridiculous things that have happened this year. That's broadly. I think personally, the way that I have viewed this is North Node and Aries as kind of set a fire or a course of
mm,
action, and then the North Node moving back into Pisces again as this like retrograde type of thing is do those actions or do those things that you were doing actually line up internally with like some kind of like internal integrity or inner world
mm,
or like why are you doing these things from like a deeper level? So I
mm,
think it invited that and invited more forgiveness, more like moving with the flow and the way that Pisces just grants us the ability to have more spaciousness around these things, which I think is so
mm,
useful. So that was a bit of a word salad, which feels appropriate for talking
which was
about
appropriate.
Pisces, but that's kind of how I've viewed it, both the good and the bad. And we can't
Yeah.
ignore the fact that the North Node or Rahu really takes the character of the sign that it's in and makes it the most amplified and sometimes egregious. And I think we've
hmm
seen that this year.
I personally can't help but think about the nodal relation or the nodal journey as
Mhm.
also being so embodied by Palestine, of
Yeah.
course, because, this settler colonist state existed long before these couple of years, of course. But the reality was October 7th for a lot of people, 2023 really altered brain chemistry in a very different way, in a very collective consciousness, like we are coming into a better understanding of the world and our humanity or lack thereof. And, I think that as much as there has been an overwhelming of grief and overwhelming of
Mhm.
despair that is hitting on all sides, not just Palestine, right? Sudan, everywhere, the Congo, you kind of recognize, though, or have to recognize that the North Node in Pisces was showing this idea of you have to feel the pain. You do. You have to feel the pain because we're all sharing in the pain and we have to
Yeah.
do something about it. And a lot of times in Plutonian work, we all know this. We do not feel motivated to act until we are getting buried by Pluto,
Yeah.
effectively. And so, as much as this has been incredibly disillusioning for a lot of people, I think what we can maybe hold on to is the reclamation of our humanity as a function of the general, like, despair.
Mm.
And something that's coming to mind right now that I've never explicitly thought of, and maybe you've thought of before. Again, I feel like I message you like, hey, wait, there's this brilliant thought, but really it's a high thought that like is a basic thought, you know? Because the nodes are retrograde, they move in a retrograde manner, so they move to the sign before it. I feel like there's a bifurcation of ego and soul conversation, right? The ego gets course corrected by the sign after, the soul course corrects by going back
By
to
going in and going
yeah,
backwards.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so it's almost like, yes, we had the charge to fight, to like, we have to break out of like this sort of polite censorship, you know? And now we move into Pisces with the North Node of Soul because we have to remember our humanity and what do we do with that humanity. And so I think there is like an interesting relationship around like soul evolution and ego evolution that simultaneously happens, but the nodes really talk about soul evolution more than ego. And so
I
that's why
love that.
you can't see it maybe explicitly showing up in the way you want to, but your soul is catching up with the lessons that will then later like integrate into the collective.
Beautiful. Perfect. Yeah.
Crossing fingers, hopefully. Hopefully there's something to be said there. But anything else you want to say about this divine, beautiful Ryan Coogler moment with the Sinners release?
No.
Obviously, Michael Jordan obviously got award nominations at the Golden Globes recently for his dual role. So
I don't know if this is a thing, and maybe this speaks to the Chiron, Anoretic kind of Sun and Aries. Like, didn't Sinners get like pushback? Didn't Variety try to like say like, no, it didn't make this much money? And wasn't there like a campaign not to get it nominated?
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yes. But okay, so like I feel like I've gone back and forth with so many publications this year on like I like you again. No, I hate you. I
Yeah.
like you again. No, I fucking hate you.
Yeah,
You
fuck Variety.
literally. But then you like
But also,
bring in
yay,
your
Variety. Yeah.
actors on actors. You're like, God damn it. And Vanity Fair with the shoot recently at the White House. Like everyone's had a moment with the press this year, okay?
Yeah.
But you're so right because Variety had kind of put out a dumbass headline about Sinners may have broken box office records, but realistically it has only recouped X and it needs to recoup this in order for this to be profitable. Like it gave you the arbitrary yardsticks when for no other film it would bring that up, right? It would only bring that up if you've done a Marvel blockbuster,
Mm.
crazy production where
Yeah.
you're like, how am I going to ever make this money back? And so you give you scale, but this was its whole own thing. And it was just bananas. They try to superimpose that dumb, arbitrary, whatchamacallit, like level, status,
Yeah.
achievement on them. Bullshit.
Lame. It's kind of the same thing
Bullshit.
they did when Beyonce won Best Country Album. They're like, now the category changes because technically it needs to be now like this. Whatever. You guys always try to move the yardstick. We
Oh my
won.
God, literally. But you know what? Now that I think about it, like the only way that this Beyonce category will make sense for me moving forward is if literally Black artists flood the categories and then
Yes,
win more.
that's right.
Okay.
I hope it backfires like that.
But speaking of other things that backfired
Hmm.
in April, we
Yes.
get to apparently like my favorite person this year because
Yes.
shout out the article that Emily and I had worked on in case you listened to our Katy Perry Let Them Eat Space Cake episode. The article's officially out. You can go purchase it if you so care to be a member of the National Council of Geocosmic Research, the NCGR. I greatly support your contributions, but either way, I was obsessed with Katy Perry this year, and
Hmm.
I felt so bad. I don't, no, 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 no. I don't feel badly for her. You know, when you see someone try and they dust themselves off and try again, Aaliyah style, and they just keep
Hmm.
failing, and then as her last resort, let me blow myself up into space, and then
Yeah.
immediately get completely rocked by the internet. Like, ooh.
It is. She's always had these moments. Yeah, just like we witnessed something super cringe from her, but she just keeps coming back again. It's that unkillable Scorpio rising, Scorpio sun conjunct Pluto and Scorpio energy.
Oh my God. And it's actually really funny because like I had cheekily called her Blue Origin launch her career death chart of this iteration
Yeah.
because immediately after, right, like she came back, like she got like separated from Orlando Bloom, like no one wanted to buy her music, like she was a laughing stock at this
Yeah.
point. But at the same time, like I still think this was an important event. Like it's yes and right. Like I get that we don't like Lauren Sanchez as a collective. I
Mhm.
get that like it's annoying to have these super wealthy people that have no business being in space.
Yeah.
But like there were still other people on that ship that super deserved to be there. Space things, even though that is not my personal value system of how I would choose to allocate resources, if other countries, again, are already allocating resources to the space race, etc., like we as a country would be stupid to not also do that. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad I'm not in politics, is all I can say.
There's something I just noticed just about having all of that Scorpio up front in the first house, that there's
Mhm.
something about her identity that just suffocates every other person in the room. So of course we didn't hear about the other like people that were, or I did because I looked into it, but generally like they're not talked about like the other people that were
Mhm.
on the ship with them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's just like Katy Perry, Gil King, and Bezos is
Lauren.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Lauren. I found that to be interesting because it could be one of the side effects of having so many planets in the first house, but then also
hmm
having it be Scorpio. It's just like everything kind of just like the attention just zeroes in on Katy Perry all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh my God, that is so true. And you know what? It's very interesting, right? Because, we talked about Pluto burying like something in the chart. She has a
Mm,
Pluto Sun conjunction, which means like when you're talking about I am I'm getting buried or I'm burying other people. And for her, it's above the horizon. So technically you can view that as 12th house. It's like
yeah.
it's almost like you have to get over it yourself, or like you have
Yeah.
to I don't know, you have to take yourself out of the equation. You can't like I don't know, there's something here again about being of like a deeper service,
Yeah.
right?
Forget the self when the sun is in the
hmm
12th. Yeah.
hmm So very interesting. I mean, Amanda Nguyen is one of those forgotten quote unquote
Mhm.
folks on the ship, and realistically, her story was really fascinating, right? Like she was so big into space research, it was her dream to go into space, and she had to navigate sexual assault harassment at the workplace, and then actively fight for justice to make it a
Mhm.
safer space, and then come back to the mission. And that is, this was closer to the Chiron Kazemi than the Sinner's release, but still very powerful when you think
Yeah.
about reclaiming identity and reclaiming story in a very heroic fashion.
Yeah, I love that. Hopefully she still got that moment, right? Just for herself personally, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
like really out there in the media.
I think she did. I think she did. And I think she had, kind of come out and said how grateful she was. Like, depending on the corner of the
Sure.
internet you were a netizen of. This is a word that I just figured out the other day. And I'm
Netizen.
like, that is so cool. On my netizen side of the internet. But what I also thought was really interesting, because we just said like Venus at the time was out of its besiegement, and yet, in this situation, it was like it might as well have been like if Venus were trapped because there
Yeah.
was just on all sides, Katie was just getting pummeled and pummeled. So you can kind of think of this Venus on the North Node as like the angry mob being enforced by the Mars in Cancer. Like,
Yeah. Like, didn't you say something or someone said something about you don't want to center women doing a big thing when Mars is in Cancer? Because what that does is it just makes
oh,
that group of women a target then for the venom of Mars in Cancer. And it was trining Saturn and Venus at that time. Again, like trines as facilitating and aiding and abetting. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, it's kind of like with Taylor Swift. They're like, don't put it out during Venus and Virgo. And for like space women stuff, it's like also don't do it when Mars is in Cancer. Like we want the women, right? We want things that signify womanity to be softened or kind of like smooth when we're doing stuff that
Yeah.
centers women.
Interesting. I actually think that's so fascinating. And I need to like think about that a lot
Yeah.
more. But I'm thinking, yeah, later half of the year we had some powerful group moments like the Cat's Eye Gap ad and K-pop Demon Hunters. And like all
Yeah.
these are a group of women, but they came after the Mars Cancer. Almost like these were the tribute. Like you had to give a tribute woman to sacrifice to the fire, so that like then everyone else can like bloom. But
Yeah.
my running joke with the Katy Perry thing was she flew off into space to run away from her marriage, and she's done everything, or her relationship, and she did everything she could to run away from that relationship. And I'm just like, that's so relatable. I mean, how many
It's
of
so
us?
Venus Sag conjunct Uranus. How far away can I get from this? Oh, I'll leave the atmosphere.
I had to literally go to the galactic center because she's got that Neptune on 29 so that I can like escape. And I realized I can't escape. I
Yeah.
have to confront the reality of what I'm here to do. So, all to say is that made me feel a sense of, you know what, that's so relatable. I too have
Girls will be
overworked.
girls, right? I didn't go to space. Maybe I buzzed my hair off or bleached it blonde, but we all do
Right.
these things not to have to face life.
Exactly. You know what? If Katy Perry, make me your PR person. Okay, if you just came in with that, like, listen, I was a girl trying to run away from a sad
Period.
relationship,
And it
and
took me to space.
it took me to space. I tried to throw money at the problem. It didn't make me happy. So there we go. Okay, that is hero talk right there,
There
Katy
we go.
Perry.
Reframe it.
Reframe. We love a good reframe. LOL, the way that tariff wars are still going on amidst this time, y'all. But
Yes.
also, Pope Francis died in
Hmm.
April, which this was a very big year around spiritual eldership and the transition into a new generation of leaders. So whether it was entertainment, whether it was politics, like you saw it across the board. But because Saturn and Neptune were doing its dance between Pisces and Aries,
Yeah.
you saw the Pope also into a
Yeah.
new era. I can't believe I
Yeah.
just
Pope Leo when Mars entered Leo, which I thought was so perfect. But yeah,
let me pull
what
up Pope
a
Leo.
symbolic kind of like change of power to now get this like American Pope who may or may not be black, LOL. But also who speaks pretty forthrightly about what he's against what is happening in his nation of origin politically.
Mhm.
And this was another thing I kind of added onto my like black people are having a moment kind of Instagram post of like Neptune and Aries, or we get this Pope that has ancestry in Chicago and potentially maybe Black ancestry. That's neither
Mhm.
here nor there, but it's just interesting that that was brought up around the same time of like Sinners and Beyonce. It's like, oh, there's like a crowning moment of like Blackness happening.
I mean, not neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Very here and very everything everywhere all at once, if we're
Hmm.
talking about Neptune. We are in a new collective era. We are being reborn, and we get to play a part in the world we want to be reborn because we all have more agency than we did way back when people were brought as slaves to this country. Like
Yeah,
there is more agency now. And I mean, there are systems in place that try to restrict that, but as a whole, everyone's pretty knowledgeable, everyone's pretty aware, and knowledge is power. And so when you
absolutely.
apply that, it becomes a deepening of that seed in the collective consciousness around the
Mm.
change you want. The revolution will be televised as such.
Yeah,
So I pull up Pope Leo's chart. Via Virgo stellium, he might be a Leo moon, which, given his love for film, I actually think is a Leo moon, honestly.
nice.
And the fact that he's Pope Leo, like he has to be a Leo moon. Like I can't imagine him not being a Leo moon. But
Yeah.
a lot of Virgo,
Mm.
significant with this year's nodes in Virgo and Pisces, and actually, LOL, right around near the blue origin line, you can already see like the South Node moving into all of his like Virgo Sun, Venus, and Mars.
Yeah, he's in a nodal square too. So his own north node,
Mhm.
south node axis is Gemini Sag.
Also, Pluto on Chiron.
Yeah.
Ooh, a new leader for the
That's what I
collective.
was thinking, that Chiron in Aquarius opposite Uranus and Leo is like a new kind of power. Like he has like the Pluto and Leo signature, the baby boomer
Hmm.
signature of like, we're holding on to power, we're important, it's gonna look like this, but maybe not so much when Uranus is in the picture. He's
Hmm.
doing some different kinds of things. Like, didn't he have like a rave the other day
Honestly, like did
for his birthday or
you
something?
know what? They had Clips perform at the
Eclipse,
Vatican,
that's what it
right?
was. Yeah.
Which was so sick because it was on the
Yeah.
eclipse. I was like, ah, this is so good. This is divine
Yeah.
intervention. This is Neptune all over this.
Mhm.
Think about it like, holy cow, right? All the Pisces at the time was also opposing all that Virgo. And like, it's just to me, again, this is a divinely anointed moment. It is very interesting that I can't remember who said this, but if Pope were to ever have like come from an American lineage, it would signify that the United States has lost power in the world because you could not have spiritual authority and ego authority be held by the same country. And
Wow.
so for the United States to now have its first formal pope is actually, as much as it is a flex, it actually is telling you really where the power is. Cool, eh?
Crazy. Yeah, that's like a noodle that I'm gonna keep noodling.
And so when you think about again the last gasp of holding on to power because the empire is dying, we are in the 250 years of the United
Yes.
States. Like
Yeah.
Rome is burning because Rome needs to burn.
Yeah. What a moment.
Just saying. But speaking of other fiery burning down moments, well, actually, there's nothing. Well, for what it's worth, the Diddy trial started in
Yeah.
May,
Hmm.
which, we go from one leader to another fallen leader, if you
Yeah.
will. And the Diddy trial, or the Diddy of it all, is still alive and well, obviously, recently with the documentary on Netflix, which I still have not watched.
Me either, because I need to consciously let darkness into my head. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
swirling around me, folks. I can't
Mm-hmm.
like, watch this on top of that. So I've been trying to choose my moment, and the moment has not come.
Mm-hmm. Well, here we have Diddy's chart just as a, nod to you, my friend. What a nodal return this was. If there
Oof.
was ever a time for let's make different choices and
Yeah.
karma coming home to roost,
Yeah.
a
With
very
Saturn
loud
hitting the
moment.
North Node, especially.
And did you see the other day he I think tried to make a fake alcohol in jail, and so they've prolonged his release again now
No.
because he tried to mix something with Fanta or whatever. I'm just like
Because he's trying to like escape while in prison in some way. Honestly, period, whatever, but that's hilarious. Like just sit there and accept it for the 50
I'm
months that you're there, which is incredibly short for what you've done.
literally you should be so thankful, honestly. Like
Yeah,
it did
use
not
this
turn out
time to turn
worse.
your life around. That's such a Saturn prompting, like for you
I
just trying to
mean,
escape it.
I'm like, LOL, put you with Martha. Like, let
Mhm.
Martha tell you how she did jail, because she really took it as a spiritual retreat.
She
And sh
did because she wasn't even supposed to be there,
no,
man.
no, she really was. Of all the things.
Diddy should be underneath the jail.
I'm surprised he has actually not gotten more. Because in jail, there's this. It's almost like there's a higher moral code, right?
That's so interesting, right? Yeah,
I love that. It's a spiritual place. Like
it
you
is.
don't fuck women,
And
children,
kids.
and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so because you've done all of this, I'm surprised you're not shanked already.
Hmm.
Not like Tory. Tory also got rocked in jail this year, but I just assumed that would happen to Diddy instead of Tory. I mean
Yeah.
Tory too, on some level.
Prison having strict moral strata is hilariously rich, and I'm gonna look into that more. Because that's
That's
so true.
so
I've never
12th
heard someone
house.
name it that succinctly. It really is. Like we have like do's and don'ts here.
And again, they're trying to reform their own society,
That's
right?
right. It is their own society. Yeah. Ugh.
That is a jettison.
Incredibly. Yeah.
What I was gonna say was Neptune at 27 degrees Scorpio. It kind of would make sense when Neptune station, and that grand water trine, it would maybe be too overwhelming to sit
Yeah,
in the pool of your destruction.
let's mix Fanta with something. Yeah.
So Neptune and Pisces.
Yeah.
But also other really, really lovely things that happened this month. We had Lady Gaga one, she had
Oh
Gaga-Cella
God, you did.
already. But now this was the largest show concert in her history, the Copacabana Beach Show.
I think it was in history ever for
Oh my
anyone.
God.
Yeah.
Incredible. If I could have an ounce of her energy.
Yeah. But she's another Venus retrograde success story. I remember she has
Mm-hmm.
Venus in Aries. It wasn't right on that station
Mm-hmm.
point, but her son was. But I
Mm-hmm.
remember I was looking at Venus retrograde in Aries through the lens of Abracadabra and how I think that song is about going into the darkness, going into Hades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reclaiming and reckoning with that mayhem, coming up, singing a song and dancing about it. Like she
Mm-hmm.
alchemized the shit out of that. And I love her. She was the bright spot of my year. Went to go see her in Vegas. So I'm just so happy
Yes,
that she
you
had a great year.
did.
Really impacted her fans, and she's just a star. I love her.
Oh, I mean, how do you feel about Mayhem making a mark at the Grammys this upcoming
Yes,
year?
it did. I don't as an Aquarius, I'm like awards, shmorts. But as a
What
person
are
who loves
titles?
what are titles even? But as a person who loves her and as a person, she's had such a long career and I really just
Yeah.
really admire that. And I admire the tenacity of women in the music industry and these Marsy women like Cardi, her, Beyonce, like they
Hmm.
all have a Marsiness to them. And I
Hmm.
really admire that. So I think she's the bee's knees. Congratulations, Gaga.
Absolutely. I mean, Pluto right now, as part of her Pluto square,
Yeah.
part of her South Node. I mean, she talked this year about I really want to be a mom.
Yeah, I think she might leave music behind. I think that's something that we might see from her with that square and Pluto in her six is like she's pivoting
Yeah.
out of the limelight and giving us
Hmm.
so much right now because
Hmm.
she's transitioning into a new phase, as all millennials will when that
I
square
mean,
hits.
It's very interesting, right? Because this is one of the themes that I had actually like earmarked a little bit is the millennial sort of
Yes.
crash out right now that we're all
Yep.
navigating with this Pluto, out of bounds Pluto and Aquarius. Like, not only, here's the thing, our Pluto Scorpio generation is really just so fucking resilient. And then the fact that we now have a Pluto square with Pluto out of bounds for the last fucking time, like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Like,
One last crucible, but we are the generation who can get through that.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
It's true. We're God stuff as soldiers. Okay.
that's
Like, I
right.
don't care what sign you are, as long as you're born in the Pluto and Scorpio era, you are God stuff soldier.
That's
Okay.
right.
And we will pull through
We
ish.
absolutely will. Just like
Ish.
Katy Perry, we will just keep coming back.
I think my thesis statement for her was she's an amazing litmus test for where we are in society because
Yeah.
Pluto's got to carve through all her Scorpio, And so
And
hopefully
she's
by
identifying, she's embodying it. It's in her. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Because I mean, right now, I don't know. Has she learned the lesson? Because she's now dating Justin Trudeau. So when you think about, all right, the comeback's already started, next chapter started, is she trying to be reborn as like a politician, first lady type of persona? How are you trying to still hold power? How are you trying to still hold on and evolve, right? Like nothing is more powerful than like people in power trying to hold on to power and like the lengths that they will go to do so. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's great transformation, sometimes not so much.
yeah,
So
yeah.
remains to be seen.
Honestly, jumping from space to like becoming the girlfriend of a former world leader just gives Sagittarius. Like skipping over the the Scorpionic review. Let's just do the next big thing.
Incredible. I mean, the last big thing, obviously, from May was the Met Gala,
Yeah.
which, again, this was a very controversial year. I get these last few years with Met Galas, right? Like the idea of do we need to celebrate all of this when the world is literally on fire right now? There's debate. I'm not here to debate that necessarily, but what I'm here to talk about is how this was an important, when we talk about the idea of rebirth and we're talking about new voices coming into the mix, this was the first year we had a black theme.
Yes. And next year, I guess we'll have kind of black people in charge. Like I can
Yeah.
see the Met Gala through you, like just trying to like pivot in some kind of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a moment. I look at that Venus conjunct Neptune at the beginning of Aries for like really showcasing refinement. Like these are both planets of refinement. So having them together,
Mm-hmm.
having them loud in Aries, the red carpet, the pizzazz and the cameras of it all makes so
Mm-hmm.
much sense. But this is
Mm-hmm.
also a Saturn moment for cementing something in the legacy
Mm-hmm.
or noticing something in, black culture's effect on fashion and actually
Mm-hmm.
centering and celebrating it in that kind of Saturnian way.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just love what you said. I'm thinking about it constantly about Uranus and Taurus creating, changing
Mm-hmm.
creation and changing art and even like what we look at in art. And so also like that
Mm-hmm.
forming a sextile to Saturn makes a lot of sense for highlighting a marginalized group for once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I love that very much. And what we failed to mention also with the Mars retrogrades was that it really, I would say, almost like a book, you have your parts and chapters. And I think that the Mars retrograde was really anchored or framed by the Mars-Pluto oppositions.
Yeah.
And so, we had that first one at the election, November 2024, but you saw the effects play out. And so now, as you can still see here, right, Mars is separating from its opposition with Pluto. Mars in Leo, Pluto in Aquarius. But when you think about again, we're transforming the stratification of society. We're transforming the makeup and the dominance or who gets to showboat or who gets to share the stage, right? Like there is
Hmm.
more of an integration of other voices into the mix and like
Totally.
it's a messy space right now. But overall, I'm still confident we're getting
Me
there?
too. It's just we're in like the rebirth. We're in like the beginning parts of it. It's meant to be like sloppy and gross right now, but I also
Hmm.
have hope. Yeah.
Yeah. People shit on pop culture. I think culture is so important because if I'm not seeing this happen, I cannot in good faith hold optimism if I'm
Mm.
looking at the reality of what's happening right now. And
Yeah,
I'm not saying to use pop culture as an escape, but similar to Neptune, delusion is helpful. You get to build the dream world into reality. When you don't believe that's possible is when you escape into it,
that's
but you
true.
can be inspired by it to then take action.
Yes. That's beautifully apt for Neptune and Aries too. Take action on the inspiration, not just wallowing it. wallowing in it and sitting in it as we do sometimes
Mhm.
in Pisces.
I mean, it's also interesting because I think you had brought up earlier, right? This was the first year they have like a new board, even, or a new
Hmm.
like editor at the helm, Nepo baby, but also someone who has worked in that field. So it makes sense with Mars Cancer. This would also maybe involve some like rise of Nepo babies, right? Like taking on family legacy in a different way or changing the path of that. But you think about Anna Wintour, as someone who has been so definitively at the top and like almost
Mm.
like embodying this like legacy. And to have this come at a time where she gets to step down is also symbolic, again, of the transition that's happening across the world. But
Yeah.
she's still there, so she's not all the way gone. And I think that also is representative of current systems, right? Like you can't just, all right, Vogue no longer exists. We're starting over anew. Like that doesn't work. These are
Yeah.
systems that have been long established, but what we can do is push it forward with the introduction of new voices and perspectives to
Yeah. New
expand that
blood.
container.
Yes, I love that.
All right, so this was May, and now we move into the summer.